Now that you have understood how to read the complicated declaration statements involving pointers, I think it's time that we move on and try to understand the definition of the pointers as well as the use of a pointer. Anyway, first, the definition. A pointer is such a variable which holds the address of another variable. I'm sure this is the definition that most of you would have read about and learnt it in your academics through the textbooks or any online content that is available on the internet. Anyway, the definition is fine, but what about the use of a pointer? That is more important. Well, let me tell you that pointers as a concept helps us, the programmer, by providing an alternative approach to access the memory location. Well, I'm sure that the use is not very clear at this point in time. Anyway, let's proceed further and try to understand both the definition as well as use in totality. Well, now that you have understood the definition of a pointer, how does it hold good for both the data pointer as well as the function pointer? Let me tell you, it's pretty simple. A data pointer, as the name suggests, would be such a variable which holds the address of data, whereas a function pointer, as the name suggests, would be such a variable which would hold the address of a function. In other words, be it a data pointer or a function pointer, what the pointer always holds is the address. And what is the use of both of these data pointers and function pointers? I have told you that the use of pointers, be it data pointer or be it a function pointer, is that it provides us an alternative way to access the memory location. What it means, let me tell you. Let's consider a data like this. Similarly, let's also consider that function. Now, I need to access the data, I need to access the function. And how can I do it? Well, I can do it either using the direct approach or the alternative approach. Any of the two I can be using. First, let me focus on the data. Now, in the data, if you really want to access it, all that you have to do in the direct approach is to mention the name of the data. You know that the name of the data is A, and by mentioning the name of the data, you can get access to the data. Well, what it means is that since I am using C language, and if I really want to get access to that 50, all that I have to do is to mention its name. In other words, in C language, I can get access to it in the direct approach using this statement. Well, this is a statement which most of you would have used in the past, just that all that I am now telling you is that this is what we call as the direct approach, because as you can notice, you have mentioned the name of the data and hence you have got access to the data. This is what we call as the direct approach. Now, what is this direct approach with respect to the functions? Well, it is pretty simple. If you really have to call that function exmp1, then all that you really have to do is to just mention the name of the function. Well, what it means is this. But then you know very well that if you just mention the name, it may not be possible to access that function, and hence you will also have to pass parameters, and I have passed the parameters 15 and 20. Anyway, look at both the direct approaches. In both of these approaches, what we have done is that we have mentioned the name. In this case, we have mentioned the name of the data. In that case, we have mentioned the name of the function. And this approach of accessing the memory is what we call as the direct approach. Anyway, pointers has got nothing to do with the direct approach. Pointers is always about the alternative approach. So what is that alternative approach to access the data? What is that alternative approach to access the functions is what we need to learn. And let me tell you, it is through this that you would understand the real use of pointers. The alternative approach or the pointer approach is actually a three-step process. Be it the alternative approach to access the data or be it the alternative approach to access the function, it is a three-step process. And the three steps are that in the first case here, you need to create a data pointer. And in that case, you need to create a function pointer. But then that is only the first step. What are the other two steps? Well, when you will create a pointer, be it a data pointer or be it a function pointer, when you would create it, it would be a dangling pointer. I know at this point in time, this term dangling is not very clear to you, and definitely moving forward, I would clarify. But then what you have to understand is that the first step would no doubt create a pointer, but that pointer would not be a specific pointer. Rather, it would be a dangling pointer. In other words, it is our responsibility as programmers to convert this dangling pointer to a specific pointer. Now, how do we do that? Well, that is the second step. In this case, with respect to the data pointer, I can convert it from being dangling to specific by assigning to it the address of data. How do I do it there with respect to the function pointer P? Well, what you really have to understand is that in this case, you need to give the address of a function. So, in the second step, what you have done is that you have converted your pointer from being dangling to becoming specific. In case of the data pointer, you have given to it the address of data, whereas in case of the function pointer, you have given to it the address of a function. Anyway, what is that third step? Well, the third step is to dereference the pointer. In this case, I will have to dereference the data pointer, and hence I would be able to get access to my data 50. And in that case, I need to dereference my function pointer, in which case I would be successful in getting access to the function exmp1. Anyway, what it all really means. What are these three steps really going to do? How to implement it? And what really is the meaning of the term dangling pointer, dereferencing? All of this is what next I need to tell you. Let me tell you that most of the times the confusion with respect to pointers is mainly with respect to the star operator. Well, let me tell you that Dennis Ritchie, the inventor of C language, has used star operator to perform 3 different operations in his language. I would say that in many ways, the star operator in C language is overloaded because it is performing 3 different operations, and many a times as beginners, when you can't figure out as to what is the role that that particular star in that particular circumstance is doing, that it leads to confusion. Well, what it all means, if I will have to tell you, then first look at this star. We can use it as a multiplication operator. Well, look at the same star. Don't you think we can use this for pointer creation? Well, this is the way we create our data pointer, and you can notice I have made use of the star operator there. This is the way I can create a function pointer, and again you can notice I have made use of the star operator there as well, which means that star in C language is not only used for multiplication, it's also used for pointer creation. And not just that, star is also used for dereferencing. What is dereferencing anyway? I would speak about it moving forward, but then the very fact that the same star can perform 3 different activities, or in other words, it is this overloaded star which is putting in a lot of confusion into the brains of the beginners. How to come out of this confusion? Very simple. Whenever you look at the piece of code, you need to analyze that code and see exactly what is the role played by that star. Is it playing the role of multiplication operator? Is it playing the role of pointer creation operator? Or is it playing the role of dereferencing? Is what you need to figure out. And if you are an expert in figuring it out, then let me tell you, pointers is never going to confuse you. There is not going to be any stars whenever you happen to see a star in your code. Anyway, let me clarify each of it in detail for you. Let's understand the different roles that the star operator plays in C language through this example. This is the program which would help you to clarify the multiple roles played by star. Now, look at the first place where the star is being used. Don't you know that it is a declaration statement? Well, how do you know that it's a declaration statement? Pretty simple. Such statements which begins with a data type, we would consider it as a declaration statement. After all, this statement is beginning with int, which means that it is a declaration statement. And what you need to understand is that whenever you notice a star in the declaration statement, then it would be treated as a pointer creation operator. And you know the way I have taught you how to read the declaration statements, right? Now, if you would read it in the style that I have told you, then you would be reading it as P is a pointer to an integer, which means that the star present in that statement is going to create a pointer called P. In other words, it is the pointer creation star. But then I think there is no need for me to tell anything about this. From when you have been learning about programming, I am sure you have understood that this star over here plays the role of multiplication. It is simple mathematics rule. So this star is the multiplication operator. Now, what about this star? Well, watch it carefully. Any program can be divided into two parts: the executable statements and the declaration statements. Declaration statements, as you can notice, would be such statements that begin with a data type, whereas executable statements are such statements which don't begin with the data type. Now, as you can notice, this happens to be an executable statement because the statement doesn't begin with a data type. Also, as you can notice, this star is not having two operands the way this star had. As you can notice, this star, it has two operands, B and C, and hence we would be treating this star as the multiplication operator. But then if you would notice this star, we just have one operand. The only operand associated with star is P. Now, if some of you would get confused that even for this star there are two operands, D and P, then I would say that you are thoroughly confused that D happens to be on the LHS and cannot be treated as the operand of this star. In fact, this star has only one operand, and that is P. In other words, in the executable statements, when you will see a star which has just one operand, then such a star, you should not be treating it as the pointer creation operator. Then such a star, you should not be treating it as the multiplication operator. Rather, what you should be treating this star is as the dereferencing operator. Now, what is dereferencing is something which I would definitely tell you, but what I would wish to say is that the same star operator in C language has been used by Dennis Ritchie for 3 different purposes, and that is what leads to the confusion. I hope there wouldn't be any confusion for you moving forward because it is pretty simple. In the declaration statements, if you happen to see a star, then treat that star as a pointer creation operator. In the executable statement, if you happen to see a star with 2 operands, then treat it as multiplication operator. And if in the executable statement you happen to see a star with a single operand, then treat it as the dereferencing operator, or I would call it as the penetration operator. Now, anyway, what is really the use of pointers is what I have still not clarified, but whatever is needed to clarify that, I have clarified all of that. So let me proceed and tell you how we can access the data in the alternative approach using a data pointer, and how we can access the function in the alternative approach using the function pointer. Let's proceed.